Hey everyone, and welcome. Have you ever really thought about the ground right under your feet? Was your neighborhood always a neighborhood? Or maybe it used to be a farm, or even a forest? You know, every single piece of land on this planet has a story. And today, we're going to dig into the science and the choices behind those stories. We're going to explore the incredible world of land use, from the concrete jungles of our cities, all the way out to the wildest places on Earth. Let's get right into it.
So here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to start with the big picture, a real bird's-eye view of land use. Then we'll zoom right into our cities to figure out the patterns of how they grow. After that, we're heading out to the countryside to look at our farms and forests. From there, we'll venture into the wild to see how we protect our most natural places. And finally, we'll pull it all together to understand the great balancing act that is modern land use.
All right, first up, let's set the stage. Before we get into all the specifics of cities and farms, we've got to wrap our heads around the one big question that really drives every single decision.
And this is it. This is the fundamental question. It seems simple, doesn't it? I mean, we use land for our homes, for businesses, to grow food, but it's so much more complicated than that. At the end of the day, we are the decision makers, and every choice is a complex mix of competing needs, environmental health, economic demands, and political priorities. Every park, every farm, every new neighborhood exists because someone had to balance all of these forces.
Okay, so let's zoom in on where most of us actually live. We're going to start our journey in the urban jungle, the heart of our human world, to see how these amazing, complex habitats really take shape. So, at its very core, a city is made up of two basic land types: residential, which is, where we live, and commercial, where we work and shop. Simple enough. But what's truly mind-blowing is the scale of this. Get this, over half of the world's population, that's more than 4 billion people, now lives in a city. And that number is climbing every single day, which makes understanding this stuff more important than ever.
And as our cities get bigger, we get this thing called urban sprawl. Just picture it, those endless suburbs of single-family homes just stretching out and out and out. The problem is, this growth often pushes right into valuable farmland and really sensitive ecosystems like wetlands. So right away you see this classic trade-off. Our desire for more space can come at the cost of our food supply and the environment. This is a theme we're going to see again and again.
What's really cool is that cities don't just grow randomly. They often follow predictable patterns. So the first model is the concentric city. Think of it like a bullseye. Right in the center, you've got your main business district. Then, as you move out, you go through these distinct rings. Maybe a zone for factories, then rings of houses that get a little nicer the further out you go. The classic example they always talk about is Chicago, where this pattern was first identified.
Okay, the second pattern is the sector city. So instead of perfect rings, this city grows out in wedges, kind of like slices of a pie. And this growth almost always follows the main transportation lines: highways, rivers, train tracks. A perfect example is Silicon Valley. You can literally see how tech companies and neighborhoods have developed in these long corridors that follow major freeways.
And our third model is the most complex one, the multiple nuclei city. In this type of city, there isn't just one single downtown. Instead, the city grows around several different commercial hubs or nuclei. The sprawling city of Los Angeles is the perfect example of this. You've got the main business district, sure, but you also have huge centers for entertainment in Hollywood, finance in Century City, and tech down in Silicon Beach. Each one of those acts like its own magnet for growth.
So how do we manage all this growth? Well, there are really two main philosophies. For a long time, conventional planning was all about economic growth, first and foremost. But that often led to huge problems like traffic jams and pollution. More recently, though, there's been a big shift towards something called smart growth planning. And the whole idea here is to find that sweet spot, that balance between a healthy economy and a healthy environment. It's all about thinking ahead.
And here are a couple of popular smart growth tools in action. First, you have green belts. This is basically a protected ring of open space. Think parks, farms, or forests that acts like a belt for the city, keeping it from sprawling out too far. Then there's cluster developments, which is another really clever idea. Instead of spreading houses out evenly, you group them together more tightly. That way, you get the same number of homes, but you get to preserve these big, connected chunks of open space for wildlife and for people to enjoy.
All right, let's leave the city in the rearview mirror for a bit and head out into the countryside. We're going to explore what are called the working landscapes, the farms and forests that give us the food, wood, and so many other resources we depend on every day.
Now, when I say farmland, what do you picture? Probably neat rows of corn or soybeans, right? Well, this chart shows something that might actually surprise you.
In the United States, the vast majority of agricultural land isn't for crops at all. It's rangeland and pasture, land used for grazing animals like cattle. So that iconic American farm landscape is actually way more likely to be a wide-open pasture than a field of corn. Now, when it comes to cropland, not all of it is created equal. The most valuable stuff is what we call prime farmland. This is the land that has that perfect recipe: amazing soil, reliable water, and just the right climate to produce huge amounts of food. This is the best of the best, the agricultural A-team. But here's the kicker: it is an incredibly limited resource. We are not making any more of it.
And unfortunately, this amazing farmland is under threat from two big forces. First, remember urban sprawl? Well, that same flat, well-drained land that's perfect for farming is also perfect for building houses on. The second major threat is something called desertification. This is when fertile land basically turns into a desert. It gets too dry and barren to grow anything. This can be driven by climate change, but also by poor farming practices that just turn productive land into dust.
Okay, let's shift gears from fields to forests. As this quote makes clear, forests are so much more than just a bunch of trees we can turn into lumber. They are these incredibly vital, living systems. Seriously, the next time you're in a forest, just stop and take a deep breath. The trees all around you are literally making the oxygen you're breathing, all while creating homes for animals, recycling nutrients, and helping to keep our climate stable. They're amazing. Now, we can put forests into a couple of different categories based on their history. Imagine walking through an old-growth forest. You'd see these massive, ancient trees, tons of different layers of plants, just an incredible amount of life everywhere. It's a stable, mature ecosystem. Now picture a second-growth forest. The trees are younger, more uniform. The whole system is just less complex. It's a forest that's bouncing back from something big, like a major fire or logging. It's kind of like the difference between a wise old grandpa and an energetic teenager. So when we harvest wood, the method we use really matters. On one end of the spectrum, you've got selective cutting. This is the most sustainable way. You just take out a few mature trees here and there, and the forest stays mostly intact. On the absolute other end of that spectrum is clear cutting. This is where every single tree in an area is removed. It can completely devastate wildlife habitat and lead to massive soil erosion, leaving behind a barren landscape that can take centuries to fully heal.
For the final part of our journey, we're going way off the grid. We're going to explore the lands we've decided to protect, not for what we can take from them, but for what they give back to us: inspiration, scientific knowledge, and a safe place for biodiversity to thrive. These are the parks and wilderness areas that are really the soul of our planet.
And the commitment to protecting these places is just huge. Just look at this number. In the U.S. alone, the National Wilderness Preservation System protects over 100 million acres of land. To give you some perspective, that's an area larger than the entire state of California. And all of it is legally protected with the promise that it will forever remain wild for all future generations. Now, on a global scale, one of the most successful ideas for conservation is the Biosphere Reserve. It's this really clever three-zone system. At the very heart of it, you have a core area, like a national park, that's strictly protected. Surrounding that is a buffer zone, where you can have low-impact stuff like scientific research or tourism. And finally, there's an outer transition area, where people actually live and work in sustainable ways. It's a model for how to live with nature, not just separate from it. So, we have covered a lot of ground today, from the city grid, through the fields and forests, all the way to the highest peaks of a protected wilderness. We've seen how our cities expand, how our farms and forests are managed, and how we work to protect our wild places. So now let's bring it all home and go over the key takeaways.
Okay, if you're going to remember anything from this, here's what it should be. First, at its heart, land use is all about trade-offs. It's a constant balancing act between what we need and what nature can provide. Second, cities don't grow by accident. They follow patterns, and we have smart tools to manage that growth better. Third, our farms and forests are essential working landscapes that we have to manage carefully. And finally, parks and wilderness aren't just nice-to-haves. They are absolutely critical for the health of our planet and, frankly, for our own sanity.
And all of this leaves us with one final and really critical question. This is the challenge of our generation. As more and more people share this planet, the need to balance our demands for homes, food, and resources with the health of the natural world becomes more urgent every single day. And it's a challenge that every one of us has a role to play in solving. So I hope you'll think about that, because how we choose to design our communities will, quite literally, shape the future of our world.